convocation is about to begin. Please come to order and please be seated. As is our tradition at Whittier College, and in honor of our Quaker founders, please join me in a moment of silence for prayer or thoughtful reflection. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair of the Faculty, Professor of Political Science, Michael McBride, and to all who are gathered here tonight. As President of Whittier College, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the Ruth B. Shannon Center for the Performing Arts and to our very special convocation this evening, in which we will honor Mr. Jim Mudcat Grant. Thank you for being here. In this convocation, we will hear from one of our student musical groups. It's called Voce, which of course means the voice. And it is fitting, this name for this group, because they have beautiful voices, but also because at this college we strive in everything we do to nurture our students' inner voices. May they please come to the stage? Thank you. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I welcome you here tonight. Let me introduce a few of our members of the board who are here as representatives tonight. First of all, we have the chairman of our board, Alan Lund, who's here. We have Ruth B. Shannon, and we have Vince Daigneault. Welcome you on behalf of the faculty and all of the students and staff of Whittier College. And I offer a very, very warm welcome to the inspiring person whom we are going to honor tonight, and to all of his family and friends who are gathered with us. We also want to encourage you while you're here. We hope that you discern a little bit about what makes this college so special, so unique, and a model for the rest of the nation. And we hope that you will return soon and often to our beautiful campus. At Whittier College, we have no higher recognition than the awarding of an honorary doctorate. We make such awards with great pride to those whose lives have personified the convictions, the ambitions, the values, and the accomplishments that we celebrate at this college. Our Quaker founders established the college with a mission to promote tolerance, internationalism, service to communities, respect for a diversity of opinion, and reverence for the value of listening to all people. They believe that individuals can and should let their lives speak and make a positive difference to their communities, to their country, and around the globe. And so it is fitting that tonight we honor an individual widely recognized as an athlete of historic accomplishment and someone who has used his prominence to make society more just and expand opportunities for all. The Genevieve Shaw Connick Chair in Religion, Professor Joseph Price, will read his citation. Professor Price is also co-director of the Institute for Baseball Studies at Whittier College, which is the first humanities-based research center of its kind associated with a college in this country. Accessible to students, scholars, and the general public, the Institute's goal is to prompt the exchange of ideas, the development of research initiatives, and the creation of public symposia and celebrations, highlighting baseball's significance in American culture. Professor Laura McEnany is the Nadine Austin Wood Chair in American History. Specializing in the post-World War II era, she has taught Whittier students for 2 decades on significant topics ranging from women and gender to military and urban history to social movements, including, of course, civil rights. This evening, Professor McEnany will be interviewing our honorand so that all of us can learn from his experiences on and off the field. Professors Price and McEnany, will you please escort James Grant to the podium and present him for this honor.
James Timothy Grant, may we call you Mudcat. You have overcome the prohibitive constraints of segregation and discrimination to accomplish a remarkable record of as a professional athlete, as an articulate advocate for social justice, as an enthusiastic activist for education, and as a dedicated proponent for recording and preserving the personal histories of African American baseball players. You have come a long way from the mill town of La Coochie, Florida, where you grew up in a row house without indoor plumbing or electricity. But even there, you could dream about going to college and playing baseball. In that house, your mother fueled your goal to become the first person in your family to attend college, and you used your athletic skills as an all-state quarterback twice, power forward, and third baseman to win a partial athletic scholarship to Florida A&M University. But suffering severe financial pressures in your second year, you felt compelled to leave school and work as a carpenter's helper to support your family. Soon, however, your baseball dreams began to come alive. As one of the first African Americans to succeed in Major League Baseball, you achieved a stellar record, winning more than 20 games in a single season, being recognized as the American League Pitcher of the Year in 1965. Now we call that honor the Cy Young Award in the American League. Twice being named to the American League All-Star team, winning 2 World Series games, and compiling more than 150 lifetime victories. Yet, as Jackie Robinson noted, the measure of a baseball player's life is not determined by his impressive record of baseball statistics, but by his impact on others. There are hordes of people and scores of organizations for whom your impact has been both positive and profound. Your commitment to the preservation of the histories of African American baseball players is signaled by your masterful memoir and commentary, The Black Aces. Notable among the organizations where your leadership has exerted a formative role are Catholic Charities, the Urban League, the Boys and Girls Club of Binghamton, and the Community Hunger Outreach Warehouse, which supplies food to 30 relief pantries in southern New York. Your advocacy for the Juvenile Diabetes Fund has raised public awareness about this critical health challenge. Your founding of the Black Professional Golfers Association has encouraged African American athletes who had been formally excluded from membership in the PGA until the 1960s. Your enthusiastic support for the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum buttressed its establishment. And 2 decades ago, your annual programs about Black history engaged Whittier College students and provided the opportunity for you to serve as a mentor to members of our Black Students Union. For these reasons, Madam President, it is my great pleasure to present James Timothy Grant, Mudcat, for the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa.
James Timothy Grant, upon the recommendation of the faculty and by the authority vested in me by the Whittier College Board of Trustees and the State of California, I hereby confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa. Congratulations.
The pomp and circumstances over, let's chat. It really is a great privilege for me to be here as a teacher, as a historian, as a member of this community. And I have to confess that although I'm not a regular baseball watcher, I remember my first baseball game very vividly. I'm from Chicago. I was born on the north side. That makes me a Cubs fan. And I went to my first game. Possibly one of your Black Aces, Ferguson Jenkins, was pitching, but I have no memory of who was playing, who was pitching, or even who won, because I went to Wrigley Field to try my first cigarette. And so All I remember is terror that my mother would find out, not baseball. So anyway, we want to talk about your baseball stories, but that's my first baseball memory. So I want to just say that our format tonight is going to be about 30 minutes of discussion total. And I'll start and get into some of the issues, and then interspersed in our 30 minutes, we want to invite the audience in our living room to join our conversation. And after, we're going to hear a musical performance. So I want to start with your early life and your paths outward from Lakuchi. And I want you to take us back to Lakuchi. You were born there in 1935, in the middle of the Great Depression, in the southernmost tip of the Jim Crow South. And I'm wondering if you can give us a snapshot of your life in that mill town.
Well, in 1935, I can remember some things in 1935, even though I was half a year old. In 1935, of course, the main jobs you could get in 1935 was lumber mill work. We had a big, huge lumber mill there, and what they would do at the lumber mill is that they would cut cypress trees for buildings and so forth and so on. We didn't have the privilege, as far as Mom would tell me, we didn't have the privilege to have the particular houses from the lumber that was being made there. So we had to make our own houses with cut-out trees and so forth and so on, as my mom tells the story. And that's how it was in Lakuchi, Florida. A few years later, of course, life did change just a little bit, and we were able to use the lumber that they were cutting out, the cypress lumbers and so forth, and we were able to have at least have what we used to call a hut. Let me put it that way, yeah.
So I heard Joe talk about your mother as one of your influences, and I'm wondering if you can talk about some of the other influences in Lakuchi that helped you imagine a wider world outside of that.
Well, they used to, when I started remembering things, I was about 8 before I could, cipher out some of the things that went on and some of the things that they used to call me, at 8 years old, they were calling me Black Jesus. Because I didn't get in any trouble.
You weren't trying cigarettes.
It wasn't because I was that good. It was that I was afraid of my mom. And I never did get in trouble, so my twin sister and my brother and everybody around town. In fact, if somebody said, Viola said, your son, he did this and he did that, and somebody else would chime in and say, not us, you must be talking about somebody else, they ain't talking about him. So that's how I grew up, and that's how I got to respect my mom. And also down south, back in those days, it was just a little bit different, because you always said, yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir, and that type of thing. And that was the way that I was raised. So I respect her so much, because by the time I got to be a male person of 19 or 20 years old, I lived a pretty good life, because I didn't get in any trouble.
Well, one of the things I read about in your book is, and we're on a college campus, we have some teachers in here. You talked about a teacher in particular, and some other folks in the town who were connecting you with the wider world, or encouraging you to explore that wider world.
Mrs. Vera Lucas Goodwin. Those of you that I signed baseballs for tonight, they noticed that I had a good handwriting. And I had a good handwriting time because I was taught by Mrs. Vera Lucas Goodman. And I learned a lot about European history through Mrs. Goodman. I learned a lot about Broadway plays by Mrs. Goodman because she taught me music, and she also taught me Johann Strauss. She taught me Bach. She taught me a lot of stuff. It seemed that she really concentrated. Well, in my grades, we only had about five boys, and the rest of them were girls. You know, so she concentrated on us quite a bit. The teachers about life and the way to walk, the way to talk, and the way to write. That's the way it was. And we always talked about Mrs. Goodwin because she gave us, she gave us good stuff.
So one of the things you talk about in your book is you began to understand at a young age, around 9 years old, I think you said, that you had athletic talent.
Say that again.
That you had athletic talent.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Good at
I better let them know I don't see good, I don't hear good, so don't start on that. Okay, yeah.
And you started to, and one of the things you said was that you had this talent, but you were not able to dream about where that talent could take you because of the segregation in baseball. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the path into athletics that was available to someone in Lacucci, Florida, with a lot of talent, but without a lot of access.
Yeah, well, I was the bat boy. The lumber mill had a team. Of course, it was segregated. We had a white team and had a black team. And I was the bat boy for the team. And they let me take batting practice, they let me pitch a little bit, let me take infield a little bit. And they taught me every position on the field. I had to play every position during practice time. And then a little bit later on, I don't mean to get too far, but a little bit later on, at age 15, I was playing with the grown-ups, and they began to teach me even more, and they were very demanding as to how well that you practice, and we would have games, and they would let me hit like I was a grown-up and stuff like that. So as time passed, I got to be pretty good, and I didn't know I was that good until a little bit later on. By the time I was 16, I still didn't know I was that hot until a prison warden, because we used to play games against the prisoners, until a prison warden came up to me, and he says, at the time I was about 15, he says, and they thought, back in them days, they thought all black folk was, if you were 15, they thought you were 28 or 30 or something like that. But that's the way it was. He came up to me and he says, there's a guy here that want to talk to you. And like I said, at the time I was about 15 years old. And I'm looking, and this guy walked up and he says, boy, you pretty good. How would you like to be a professional ball player? I said, I would love to be a professional ball player. I wasn't thinking, but when he said professional ball player, I said, yeah. So he said, okay, I got a contract for you. So I looked at it. The rest of the team, they went, yeah. And I looked at it, and I signed it. And there's a part where you have to put your age down. So when I put 15 down, he looked at me and he said, you ain't put 15? I said, yes, sir. I said, I'm 15 years old. He snatched that contract back. Yeah. He said, I'll see you in 3 years.
Yeah.
that's how it started. And then as time passed, I got to be a little bit more serious about it because they not only did they tell me I was good, but I got to the point where I said I ain't too bad. So I kept at it, and I finally did sign a contract when I was 18.
One of the things that maybe you could talk a little bit about, and then I'll turn to the audience for a question, is one of the ways we know we're good or that there's possibility for us is to see people doing what we want to do. And so Jackie Robinson, the news comes out about Jackie Robinson in 1945, and you're 10 years old. And can you just talk a little bit about how you found that out, the transmission of news from the so-called Negro press, and then how you felt about it when you found that out?
Well, I used to carry the local, not local, but national newspaper. And I would pick it up once a week, and I would bring it back home, and I would read about it, and I read about Jackie Robinson. I did get in trouble because I also read, 6 weeks later, I also read about a gentleman by the name of Larry Doby. Now, Larry Doby was the first African-American in the American League, and Jackie was the first in the National League. Well, everybody wanted to be Jackie, J.R., Robbie, Jackie Robinson, but I wanted to be Larry Doby. And I got beat up every day. I had to run on every day because I wasn't Jackie, I was Larry. But I always wanted to be Larry Doby, and him being the first African American in the American League. I guess I just took to him for some reason. Not that I didn't like Jackie, but I loved Jackie, and everybody loved Jackie, but I wanted to be Larry Doby. And I changed my name. I not really changed my name, but I told him, I said, I'm Larry Doby. And that's the way it was. And I started looking at the history of the game back then, because those two gentlemen, being the first African American that was able to play in the National League, it also enabled some other players to play in the minor league, because before then, African Americans could not play in the minor leagues either. So I started paying attention to even the minor league ball players and so forth and so on. And I kept up with those two ball players until the Luke Easters and Suitcase Simpson and all of those guys. And then by now I am about 16, and they had a Florida State Negro League. These were the ball players that was good enough but was better off playing in the Florida State Negro League. So I put my age up to 21.
And that's how you got to play there.
Yeah, and they paid good. Paid 50 cents a game. Back then, 50 cents was a lot of money.
Yeah, that was a useful lie.
You got it. And Mom, she didn't allow me to play on Sunday. And the ministers and the fans knew that I was playing on Sunday. It didn't matter what kind of sermon that the preachers, Reverend Farr was the first minister, but no matter what kind of sermon he was preaching, and of course you had to be in church, on Sunday. There was no doubt about that. But he would be preaching his sermon, and I kept my uniform in the parsonage, and he would be preaching, and he'd look at me, and he'd go. that meant get you over there and
Yes.
get your uniform
Yeah.
on and get down to the stadium.
I love that.
And that's what I did. Now, all of the folk there knew that my mom didn't want me to play on Sundays. But at that time, that was the only time we could play. So what they would do is that they would stand up over the fence to make sure that I didn't get caught by her. Because if I did, I was in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, so they would have two bandanas. They would have a white bandana and a red bandana. If they waved that red bandana, that means I had to go. That was it. The white bandana said she ain't coming.
Right.
So I could
So
play.
keep playing.
Yeah. Keep playing.
I love that. System of signals.
Yeah.